Broadcasting from the... This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Beautiful Friday morning, and it's time for Ocala Magazine Radio. Philip Glassman and Melissa Deskovic are in the studio, and their special guest is our friend Kevin Christian, Public Relations Officer and the coordinator of the television media production for Marion County Public Schools. So,
that is correct. We've got the public relations director.
That's right. That's right.
It. Yes.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you? How you doing, Melissa?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
You look good. I like that little violet thing.
Pink.
How you like my hair? I got wicked hair now, huh?
I love it.
Yeah.
It looks great.
My hair's shorter than Kevin's now.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a buzz cut.
Well, Robin said, you know what happened? She had, and then she said, even it out.
2 mistakes and that's it, right?
Yeah. Good job.
I thought he was kidding.
No, I had to match up the side.
We're all kind of in blue, besides you, right? I mean, the rest of us are
No,
kind
Kevin
of
and I match because we're purple.
blue
So
and purple.
Listen, this shirt's got every color in the world
He's got
on
it all.
it.
There's a rainbow in there.
So what is the topic today? Is that the
It's Marion County Public Schools, and what he wants to focus on is security and safety, and it's kind of a national issue that's happening, kind of brought down to a local.
Yeah.
And what's happening with him, and I'll let him talk about that. What's happening?
it's a jackhammer.
Well, that jackhammer in the background, hopefully that's not a security threat. We won't worry about that.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
School security has obviously become a focal point in the last few years, I'll put it that way. Obviously since Columbine, and as it should be, it's a major concern for us now, especially in the public school systems in Florida, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Safety Act, which is law now. So there's a lot of things that we have to do, including having an armed officer or an armed guardian on every school campus whenever students are present.
Right.
Did that all start after Columbine?
It actually started after Parkland.
Yeah.
Last year.
After Parkland.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we have SROs, school resource officers, in every one of our schools. Those are, as I said, law enforcement officers. We also have some armed guardians who have gone through the guardian program established by the legislature. And then we have our own police, I don't want to say force because that makes it sound bigger than it is, but we have 6 officers who are legally allowed and licensed to carry weapons. And so they kind of rotate throughout all of our schools as well. And much of that came as a result of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Safety Act.
And one of the big things I remember that you did was it Alice Protocol? Is that what it was called?
Alice Protocol, which if you went to school in the last 20 or 30 years and there was an emergency on campus, what did you do? You went to the corner and hid.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, today we don't teach kids to do that. We teach the exact opposite. If you can get out of that room safely, get out of that room. If you can cause a commotion to disturb that person if they enter your room, throw stuff at them. Do whatever it takes to keep yourself safe.
Both of my cousins' kids they were at the time about 8 and 10, and they were both in Parkland, and they hid in a closet, and they were in a closet for I think 8 to 10 hours.
Oh my gosh!
And I tell you, they're my cousins, so I grew up with them, so I'm born, the whole thing, and they really changed their whole life. What transpired?
Traumatic.
Yeah, it really.
No doubt.
I credit our school officials, Kevin and Heidi, and everybody with the school board for deciding to lock the doors after Parkland, because when that kid went into Forest with that gun, he shot the door.
Yeah.
He was probably trying to open it like he sees in the movies, and guess what? It didn't work, and lives were saved because of that one decision.
And there was a lot. There was hundreds of people in there.
Yeah. And as a parent, I have 2 teenage daughters who both go to Forest. So that was probably one of, as a parent, the scariest things.
I know.
My husband and I had just sat down for coffee, and our cell phone rings, and it was my daughter.
Oh my gosh.
Who basically called us, and she called her father, and I could only hear certain things from his cell phone, but all I heard was active shooter, lockdown, code red.
Oh
and
my
as a
gosh.
mom, I literally just picked up my shoes and ran to the car because it was like, what do we do? But of course, by that time, the school had already started responding, and they were diverting people to First Baptist at that time, and So as a parent, it's good to see the school teaching the children to react and how can we save ourselves? How can we make this situation better?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, my daughters now, they go into a room and they know, okay, this is an exit point, this is an exit point, here's what I could use. It's kind of crazy they have to do that, but
That's the society in which we live. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
And when that shooting happened, the person we turned to was Kevin.
Yes.
He was the one who gave us the information that everybody wanted to know.
Yeah.
What's going on? That's the question everybody wanted to know. How you evacuated everybody to the other locations. I think a church volunteered,
Baptist.
right?
Yeah, First Baptist.
So, I mean, that was... you guys get some kind of an award for that. I don't know. Yeah.
It's a situation that we pray never happens
I
again.
know.
April 20th will always live in our minds.
Yeah.
But, we've moved beyond that now. We've moved to single entry points on campuses. We have moved to multiple surveillance cameras on every
Good for you.
campus.
Yeah, I'm glad to
we
hear
have
that.
moved to, as I mentioned, SROs and armed uniformed officers on campus. So it's unfortunate, as you said, Melissa, but that's the day and age in which we live. I always tell people our schools are microcosms of what society is. So whatever we deal with in society, that's what we're dealing
That's
with
true,
in
too.
schools.
Do you find that, because my daughter and my son, they go to Cornerstone, which is a private school, but we just went back to school and there was an officer there. So is that doesn't fall under your jurisdiction?
Correct.
But are they following lead to what you're doing?
Yeah, I think private schools certainly see the danger, if you will, as being open targets, and I believe many private schools and other educational facilities, for example, daycare centers, have incorporated additional security measures since all of these things have happened.
Daycare.
Before we started, you guys were talking about Disney World, and I've always thought that maybe whatever they do to keep people who want to do harm out, maybe we could incorporate that into the schools. Maybe it's too much money.
Can we get that budget?
Is that what it is?
We need
Just
the
too much
Disney World
money?
Pretty much. I mean, Disney World has their own police force. They have their own city underground there. It's, it's very, very tight. But obviously, they're very, very high budgets on everything that they do.
And you have to look at it. When you go to Disney World, you're going to private property.
Oh, absolutely.
They have the right to search and do whatever they like.
Right.
Do anything.
Well, don't we have the
Different.
right in schools?
It's different when you're dealing with public property. It's a different aspect.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. But you are doing a really good job. I mean, the one thing that came out after Parkland was, well, maybe we'll never stop the shootings, but can we stop them from happening on a school? At a school, I mean.
We're doing what we can, absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course, we had Max Schachter here,
Right.
and who was father of one of the Parkland
Of
victims.
Alex, yeah.
And his perspective certainly is poignant and relevant and valuable in terms of insight into just how things came down that day. But, it's always easy to sit and look at a situation and say, oh, well, they should have done this, they should have done that.
Yeah.
Hindsight's
Right,
20.
right,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
But I'm confident that we have prepared and are preparing as best as we can. A lot of people will say, well, put metal detectors in every school. Okay, let's do that. You got a metal detector. Well, at Forest High School, you got 8 main doors.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah.
So you got 8 metal detectors. Well, that means 8 people have to be at those metal detectors all the time, because if you don't have a person monitoring, what good are they?
Yeah, right.
So when one of those goes off, that person takes that kid to the office or whatever. Well, then somebody else, you have to have another person to step in.
Yeah.
So it's a manpower issue. It's not realistic to think that you could put
It's
a metal
budgets.
detector.
It's budgetary. Again, I mean,
It is
everything is
budgetary,
very
absolutely.
expensive to have that type of security.
When this happened, there was discussion with the listeners and us about dogs. Like at the airport, you have, or in New York City, for example, you have dogs like on every corner that are trained. Is that a realistic idea, to have dogs at the schools that can sniff that stuff out a little bit?
We have dogs on campus periodically that do drug searches and those kinds
good.
of things. Of course, we don't announce those for obvious reasons.
You just did. I didn't mean to drag you down that hole. I didn't know.
And one of the most wonderful things is that all of the students from kindergarten up through 12th grade, they're all familiar with the school resource officers and the other officers that are on their campus, so they're
Yeah.
very familiar to them. And Kevin, you make sure of that.
Well, and I think getting the students involved is a key point, because if you do see something, or you know something, or you saw something on Facebook, that's how they they stopping these things? You know, I mean, if you got a little.
So far, yeah, we had a few stories.
Yeah.
Stopping them, yeah.
You know, I just remember, though, because Parkland happened, and then, you know, next thing you know, it was like Forest High School. And I mean, I graduated from Forest High School, so it was like, wow, Forest High School, you know. And obviously, it was deterred, it was shut down fast, and, you know, but I mean, it was a situation right here at our background.
It hit home.
Yeah, it really did. It's crazy.
The resource officer at that school, by the way, got accolades, as did the teacher who engaged the shooter in some conversation. And so there was a few people there that came out looking really good and did their job.
You know, it's interesting when you look at April 21st forward to today. The room where that happened is now it's called The Rock. And it's a resource for high school students who maybe are hungry or need clothing or personal hygiene items, or just need a place to go to talk to somebody, or just need a place to go and be quiet and think. That's what that room is now. So they've taken something bad and turned it around into something very positive.
Well, that was when you kind of reviewed him and what was going on in his life that brought him to do that. Sure. Those were the reasons why it was happening. You know, a lot of these things, you know, and I always say this to my mom, because my mom has Ocala Family Medical Center here in town, and I mean, she just has the power to change lives. But it's you know, you look at a lot of these people that are doing these shootings, and I always say, well, why don't they take a blood count on them and see, you know, were they taking Prozac, were they taking this, because I mean, a lot of these things that they're doing, a lot of them were just normal people, and then next thing you know, they went on a haywire. So it's almost like they're taking some of these, you know, mood altering drugs, if you would.
Sure. I think that actually was what they did with one of the more recent shooters. I can't remember which one.
You don't ever hear about that, though. You never hear, oh, you know, this guy was taking that.
It was the Ohio shooter from a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
They did toxicology on him.
Yeah, and it did show that he had been
What was he taking?
Several different medications.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing, is they're prescribing 4 medications to someone, you know, so if you're taking, who knows what's going to happen.
So are the schools, Kevin, are they engaging in the mental health evaluations in a different way than we used to do?
Yes, that is, again, part of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Safety Act. We now are required to teach 5 hours of mental health awareness to middle and high school students. That starts this year.
That's
great.
We
also have to have a threat assessment program in place where when a student gets in trouble the first time, that triggers a whole set of steps to, I don't want to say label that student, but to track that student, to evaluate that student.
Right.
And should that student get in trouble at this school and face discipline there, and then withdraw and go to another school, that school can pull up that student's panel and know the status immediately. I mean, that's within hours.
I think that's going to be like one of the biggest things in combating this situation, because if you know, you can get a red flag here and there, it's going to give you a heads up at least.
And that's through cooperation with the school system and with law enforcement agencies and other community organizations that have access to that. It's a very secure panel, if you will.
And Kevin, what you and Dr. Mayer and the Marion County School Board are doing is you're giving all of the students a sense of purpose now, because they're going there to learn, they're going there to have fun and volunteer to help the community, but they're also on the alert looking for changes in behavior, whether right there at the school or on social media or at outside activities.
I always say the best eyes and ears that we have on campus are students.
Yeah.
They are the best eyes and ears. They know their campus. They know who's supposed to be there. They know who's not. They know who's acting strangely.
Right, and who's kind of kooky.
Yeah, we have to encourage them not just to see something, say something, but to do something now. That's kind of our mantra that we've adopted this year.
When they'll be motivated too, because I mean, it could save their life.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, it's just not a game.
You know, and it really underscores how effective and important like video productions are. I mean, you're so involved with that, and you've made sure that the kids, you and the whole team with the student media thing, that these children know how to make those videos. And when we go to those events, it's amazing.
Those videos are poignant and leave you speechless many times.
And they send a message to the other kids.
Understand the point of those public service announcements and the importance of sharing that with others.
Yeah, I think they're very more powerful than we probably realized that when you first began this whole program. Well, you probably did, because that was your job. I mean, that's what you did.
It's a long time ago, Larry, when that started.
You don't look any older. You look the same.
Oh, bless you.
You know, I just found out a couple of weeks ago, they've been doing the radio show since 1984?
84, yeah.
84, which is actually the same. Oh, no, actually, the magazine actually started in 1980, so 4 years before. But I mean, there's not too many businesses in this market that have been around from 80 or 84.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
Maybe I'm going to die soon.
Don't say that.
Don't say that.
You just got a haircut.
And if you die, I will kill you.
So are the students actually able to give their 2 cents about what could be a solution to this problem?
Oh, absolutely. Students have to be involved in the process. We as adults make decisions as adults, but it's important to gather student input because, again, these campuses belong to the students. They're the ones who know those campuses best. We can have scores of teachers on Westport High School's campus. That's our largest school, almost 2,700 high school students on one campus. And to think that a staff of 150 to 180 can manage that whole campus by themselves? Students own their schools. And I haven't done the analysis on last year's numbers, but I usually will look at all of the number of incidents in a given school year and divide that by the total number of students that we have enrolled. And typically, it's less than 0.5% of all students that cause the issues that make the headlines and lead the newscasts.
So it's less than 0.5%.
Less than 1/2 of 1%.
Oh, you just had a huge hiring event for all of the new teachers. What type of question do you ask them about the safety of the schools? How do you know that they are ultra observant when it comes to that?
Well, they undergo training. They have to undergo training for their classrooms, everything from code red, code yellow, fire drills to what we call soft corners. All of that is integrated into their training before school even starts.
What is soft corners?
Soft corners is if you take the Parkland shooting, for example, that individual, he walked into the school and looked through the glass panel of the classroom door and shot through that glass panel.
Oh my gosh.
Because he had a line of sight. He could see people on the other side. Soft corner means you have to go beyond a certain point in the room so that if somebody looks through the glass door, they don't see you. So it's, you can't build a structure in the room. But when if you were to take this glass door in your studio here, probably the only safe corner, soft corner, would be that corner right there. And that's questionable because you could probably see that corner.
That's probably where I need to sit.
But you're completely open. This is a complete glass door. But in a classroom, the door usually has a window that's maybe 8 to 10 inches wide and 24, 30 inches tall. So it's a long rectangle. So imagine just kind of peering through that glass and looking into the classroom. The ideal situation would be if an active shooter would look through that glass, he or she would see nobody in that room. That's what we mean by soft corner. Love to say every single room has a soft corner. I can't tell you that because we have schools that are 50 and 60 years old.
What are people thinking about this? I would have never thought of that. What was it? The other day we saw some children getting off a school bus and they all had see-through backpacks. Is that a rule?
It's not a rule, but it's certainly some schools. That's the only kind of backpack that I will allow. It's not a rule as a district, but some schools say if you're going to use a backpack, it has to be clear.
It makes sense to me. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the bulletproof backpacks that are on the market now? Because the advertisements are targeting the parents to buy them for the children.
How much do those cost?
Yeah, about $200-300.
I don't know many parents that can afford that kind of money for a backpack.
Yeah, that doesn't stop.
Great idea, not practical.
Yeah, and it doesn't really stop it. Because,
It doesn't.
they could shoot you in the leg or they could shoot you in the head.
Are there any red flags that alert you to the fact that somebody might be up to something aside from like posting on Facebook and that kind of thing?
Well, certainly social media is a world in and of itself. But if you are visiting our campus, you have to have an ID on you, visible. If you don't, our students and our teachers are trained to get an administrator and say,
"Oh, good to hear
this
that."
person doesn't have an ID." That's particularly at the middle and high
tag?
school. If you check in, you have to check in at the front office, and they give you a sticker, a badge that goes on your lapel. So
we do that
so
at
people
Cornerstone,
know
too.
that you're supposed to be there. So that's one point that we are stressing this year: is if you see something, say something and do something. If you see somebody on campus, you don't have a badge on, they're probably not supposed to be there.
Right.
So point them out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're going so far as we're starting a new program at the high school level where all high school students will have a district-issued ID badge on a specific color lanyard.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
That's good.
let's take Vanguard. Vanguard may have a red lanyard with these ID cards, which would have the student's name and the student's photo. And if you're on campus and you don't have that, then somebody's going to say, where's your ID? Oh, I forgot. I left it in the car. Okay, well, then come with me. Let's go to the office because we have a backup set of
Really?
IDs.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's really
Yes.
good.
So, I mean, that takes time to implement because you're talking 10,000 students.
Yeah.
And there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
And it probably takes courage on the part of the student, especially if the person is an adult. I mean, if a student notices an adult without the tag and says, "Hey, come with me. We got to get your tag."
Well, what that student would do would be report it to their teacher or to
Right.
an adult around them. We don't want students going up to strangers, but again, students
the
are the best
opposite.
eyes and ears we have.
Yeah, sure.
They
sure,
know
yeah.
their campuses.
How do you handle after-school activities? I know Vanguard High School has a wonderful thespian program, and they put on plays throughout the year.
Well, not just that, you have athletic games. You have
Exactly.
all kinds of after-school activities that are for the community. Some of those events have armed security that are hired beyond the typical school day because those officers have to make a living too.
Oh, is that right? Wow, I didn't know that. So like last night.
Does every event after school have an officer? No. No. But again, we have to trust our students and our staff members with the safety of their campuses and encourage them to see something, say something, do something. I know I keep saying that, but that is really
That's it.
Well, it becomes, Vanguard's a big school also, so when you start talking about these big schools, there's so many points of entry, like you said earlier, it becomes, it's a big job.
it is. And we're adding fencing to all of the high school properties and the middle school properties
To consolidate
to
them.
drive
Entry.
that traffic to a
Right.
single point of entry.
Right.
Westport's a good example because that school was designed for that.
Right.
Vanguard was never designed
No,
for
right,
that.
yeah.
So,
How about Forest now with the redevelopment? Is that laid out for it also?
well, you have the perimeter fencing along the front, but not all the way around the perimeter. So we've added fencing from building to building that still restricts the flow
Right.
of pedestrian traffic or
The
student
old
traffic.
Forest would have been a nightmare because there was, so many points of entry. I mean, you could go all the way.
Well, there are students on that campus, and that campus will have to be fenced at some point.
Yeah, that's still.
on the old campus?
Forest, MTI, yeah.
Yeah,
Marion
that's
Technical
part of the school
Institute.
system.
Oh, those students. I thought you meant Forest students.
So, are there any laws we need to pay attention to support or become aware of that would be good, that either on the state level or the county level?
Well, at this point, the House bills are just being introduced for the new legislative session that starts, I think it's January 14th. So
Yeah.
we don't really know what's going to come up there. But, education is always a target, no pun intended, but it's always a target for what we call unfunded mandates. Public school systems will do this. Public school systems will teach this. Public school systems must have this. And oftentimes, those requirements
And-
that every school district must do don't come with appropriate funding
Oh my gosh! So they're telling you what to do, but there's no money to do it.
or not enough money to do
Oh
it.
my gosh! Okay.
So that's a big point of frustration for every school district, ours included, because
Yeah.
we're required to do it, and if you don't do it, I mean, you already know there
I know.
grand jury investigation of school districts now.
Yeah,
So
And the safety issue also flows over into the school buses for the students.
sure, our buses are equipped with GPS and video cameras, and a student's behavior on the bus is the same as a student's behavior on campus. That bus is an extension of the campus.
Yeah.
So they're subject to the same discipline.
I saw a report this morning, kind of a sort of related, people passing school buses with the stop sign out.
Those people don't deserve to drive.
It's unbelievable. I think there was like 6 of them already in this little county in Georgia. I was watching a Georgia broadcast actually. So
If you're in that big of a hurry, go another way.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not
a
worth
chance of
risking
running
the
over a
life of a
kid.
child.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
But did they catch them there?
yeah, they got 6 that got tickets, and there were others that they just went through. Nobody knows who they are, but they
I
have
think they
cameras
should
on
take
those
their
buses.
license for that. I mean, that should be in the forget a ticket for that.
Philip and Melissa, you brought in a good friend, Kevin Christian. Thank you for doing this, and
Thank you for having us.
always a good segment. Kevin, thank you for what you do, and everybody over at the school board.
It's all a team effort.
Yeah.
Dr.
And
Mayer.
anything the magazine can do to help you, give you a voice, or whatever we can do to help, obviously, we're behind anything.
Great story in this month's issue. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That's the one Robin handed me, right?
Yeah.
Carrie
Protecting
David,
our
written by
children.
Carrie David?
Carrie David.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you all. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA.